Thank you, Sarah. Thank you all for having me. It's really good to be here. I've driven past this building for the last 30 years, and now I'm finally here. So it's really, really cool. So I've always wondered what it looks like in here. But thank you for having me here to speak and share this space with you. My name is Matthew Hawn, and I'm a social studies teacher and a baseball coach, and I taught for 16 years in Sullivan County schools. On May the 5th, 2021, the same day that the state of Tennessee's General Assembly passed its anti-CRT legislation, I was dismissed from my job for talking about racial equity, racial justice, and white privilege with a contemporary issues class. People ask me all the time what this past year has been like, and because I am still in litigation, I can't talk about the particulars of that, but this past year has been challenging. I have received support from all over the country, and here at home, my family and my friends have been super, super supportive, and I'm appreciative and grateful for that. It's meant the world to me to have teachers and students send words of encouragement and email me since this began. I have reconnected with old friends and been humbled by my former students in their response to my dismissal. And the community has been extremely supportive of me. Whenever I see people out, they ask me how I'm doing, they ask me how my family is doing, and then they ask, do you need anything? Can we help you? And I'm eternally grateful for that. But it's when I'm alone with my thoughts, it's when this becomes more challenging. I think about the challenges of an unknown future, a looming legal case, grieving the possible loss of a career because I still plan on getting my job back, being absent from the classroom from a job that I love and I like to think I was pretty good at, missing the students that I had in class but before I was dismissed and getting to see them graduate. I was not able to do that this year. Fighting depression and anxiety and having people across the country watch this case and the outcome of it in this battle of CRT will kind of predict on in which way we are moving as a country. How am I going to live 10 years from now? And the list can go on and on and on. I never thought that I would be in this situation, here in this room speaking with you. Let's be honest, the reason why I'm here is because I was dismissed from my job. And that's okay, because this is an opportunity. The thing that has carried me through this is finding opportunity in trauma and being grateful for that. Like this has been challenging and difficult, but I wouldn't be here sharing this space with you lovely people had I not been dismissed, right? Like I wouldn't have been humbled by my former students and getting to hear them talk about their time in my classroom. You know, I had one student say, in Coach Hawn's class, I learned that it was okay to change my mind. And that it was okay to be wrong. Because when we're wrong, there's an opportunity to learn. And that just, that made me feel good. I have also had the opportunity to become friends with the poet whose poem I shared in class, Kyla Janae Lacey. Check out her work. It is absolutely fantastic. But she and I talk once a week and text almost daily. I've reconnected with old friends. And my former AP English teacher and we talk 2 or 3 times a week, and we have dinner or lunch once a month. Those are opportunities, and I'm grateful for those. My AP English teacher also, who I look up to, who was a fantastic educator, also gave me a nod of approval on my lesson plans and the way that I operate my classroom environment. And that was it for me. That's all I really needed, because she was fantastic. It's nice being up here in front of people again. You know, as a teacher, you know, we do demand attention. We do like the attention. So while I have you here in this space, let's talk a little bit about critical race theory. Let's talk about what it is and why there is a backlash against it and a panic. Let's talk about how that panic and backlash is playing out in state and local legislation, the effect on public schools and public school teachers, and then what does this mean for us as a community? I'm going to read from the American Bar Association. CRT is a practice of interrogating the role of race and racism in society that emerged in the legal academy and spread to other fields of scholarship. Kimberly Crenshaw, who coined the term CRT, notes that critical race theory is not a noun but a verb. It cannot be confined to a static and narrow definition, but is considered to be an evolving and malleable practice. Critical race theory critiques how the social construction of race and institutionalized racism perpetuate a racial caste system that relegates people of color to bottom tiers. I heard Professor Crenshaw speak in a meeting earlier this week, and she described critical race theory as much of what we, black and brown people, use to survive in the world. It's being followed by security guards when we enter places to shop. It's having conversation with our kids about how to interact with the police. It's looking at a history that for most of it, considers us second-class citizens. It's fighting for voting rights and the closing of polling places in our neighborhoods. Now, the question is this being taught in public schools? And the answer is, well, kind of. Okay? Do you all know what string theory in physics is? Okay, me either. I don't either. I'm a social studies teacher, but I'm going to read this from Wikipedia. And yes, Wikipedia, that's okay, don't. Just for the sake of being here. String theory is a theoretical framework in which the point-like particles of particle physics are replaced by one-dimensional objects called strings. Now that makes absolutely no sense to me at all. But if you read further about string theory, one of the principles of it is gravity. Now, I think everyone in here knows what gravity is, correct? Gravity is one of the very first things we teach in a high school physics class. But because we teach gravity in high school physics, does that mean we are teaching string theory? No, it doesn't. It's kind of the same principle with critical race theory. We talk about slavery and the effects on the people. We talk about slavery and the effect it had on the enslaved people. We talk about Jim Crow. We talk about mass incarceration. We talk about school segregation in schools. But that doesn't mean we are teaching critical race theory. Critical race theory is a graduate level law school class. It is not being taught in second grade social studies. It is not being taught in high school social studies. Nowhere in the Tennessee State Standards does it mention critical race theory. Now, I don't know about the other 49 states, but I would be willing to bet that if you were to look at them, you would not find critical race theory there either. Now, why is there such a backlash against critical race theory? Well, note the timing of this panic. What happened in 2020? We had a racial reckoning with the killings of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor. Okay? It's coming after the work of people like Hannah Nicole Jones and Ta-Nehisi Coates, whose voices were once segregated, are now being allowed and discussed in the marketplace of ideas. Right? And we've seen this in the past, right? After the passing of the Civil Rights Act, there was backlash. After school desegregation, there was backlash. You know, I'm sure there are plenty of other instances in history, but due to time, I'm not going to get into that. But I'm sure you all can think of those and say, well, this is just another iteration of that backlash. Okay. Opponents claim that students are being taught that white children are inherently racist and that white pupils should feel anguish about the color of their skin because of the actions of their ancestors. Another complaint is that students are being taught to hate America.
What?
Yeah. Now, emphasizing the arrival of the enslaved people in 1619 as the founding of the United States instead of 1776. Okay? We aren't modeling or we aren't teaching our students American exceptionalism. America's curriculums, they say or they claim, is focusing on its faults instead of how great we are as a country. Now, if you put that into practice in other areas, take medicine, for example. Well, are we only going to study healthy bodies? That doesn't make sense, right? A few years ago, my sister had colon cancer. Now, imagine 25 years ago if we had just stopped researching colon cancer. We don't do that with anything else. Like, we look at problems and we try to solve those problems, those issues. And that's what we do in the academic arena. Okay? In the state of Tennessee, the CRT panic started with a representative who got on the floor and said that he received an email from a 7-year-old student claiming that she was depressed and suicidal after a discussion in her school about white privilege. She said she's ashamed to be white. They said they claim in North Carolina that students were made to stand up and apologize for the actions of their ancestors. Now, I bet you can probably guess that these claims are completely unfounded and they haven't been proven. But this is what we're up against. This is turning into legislation at the state. Okay. This came after an equity gag order signed into an executive order by President Donald Trump after he heard a guy by the name of Christopher Rufo go on a talk show host program on a network that I won't mention. But he said that it is absolutely astonishing how CRT has pervaded the very institution in every institution in federal government. So the president signs a gag order banning federal agencies, contractors, and grant recipients from conducting trainings programs that address systemic racism and sexism. And then that filters down to the states. Currently, or since that passing, in the fall of 2020, 42 states have introduced bills, 17 have restricted critical race theory and divisive concepts. Now, what do these bills say? Well, in the state of Tennessee, for K through 12, and now for our colleges and universities that have typically enjoyed a strong protection of academic freedom, These bills say a divisive concept means that one race or sex is inherently superior or inferior to another race. An individual, by virtue of the individual's race or sex, is inherently privileged, racist, sexist, or oppressive, whether consciously or subconsciously. If an individual should feel guilt, discomfort, anguish, or another form of psychological distress solely based on the individual's race or sex. Now, in the classroom, how do we keep, or even how do we monitor making students feel uncomfortable? A lot of students feel uncomfortable in geometry. I felt uncomfortable diagramming sentences. I was terrible at it. But they aren't enacting legislation on that, right? In colleges, they are now in the state of Tennessee, where, like I said, they typically enjoy academic freedom. Each public institution of higher education shall conduct a biennial survey of the institution's students and employees to assess the campus climate with regard to diversity of thoughts and the respondents' comfort level in speaking freely on campus, regardless of political affiliation or ideology. They're conducting surveys on the political climate of our colleges and universities. I can think of a few problems with that, right? First of all, how do you know the survey results are accurate? How do you know people are getting on there and telling the truth? I don't think they've quite figured that out yet. I'm waiting on it, so maybe one day we'll see that. In high schools, in districts, there is part of this legislation that says schools shall not permit the usage of curriculum or supplemental instruction materials that include or promote a host of important social and historical concepts, including racism, sexism, the violent overthrow of the United States government, and other forms of oppression or division based on a number of identities. It permits instruction that discusses history of an ethnic group and the impartial discussion of controversial aspects of our history, and the impartial discussion on the historical oppression of a particular group of people. As a teacher, how do you do that? How are you impartial when discussing Native American genocide? When you hear stories that, U.S. troops were giving Native Americans blankets infected with smallpox. How are you impartial when talking about Jim Crow? These are some of the challenges, these are some of the challenges our teachers are facing. If I were a teacher, I would not know how to prepare lessons and talk with my students honestly and in a safe classroom environment with language like this in legislation. Right? Because it's our job as teachers to allow students to analyze and evaluate on their own concepts and ideas. And now we're banning them outright or having impartial discussions. So does that mean if a student takes a strong stand against Jim Crow, how am I supposed to react to that as a teacher? Because I'm supposed to remain impartial. Because of mask mandates and the pandemic, and this CRT panic, we know what opponents of CRT and mask mandates are doing. They're effectively trying to end public education. The state of Tennessee opened up shop for 50 charter schools to steal money from to steal money from that public schools desperately need. Right? And they're not shy about that. I don't know if you all, I'm sure you did, you saw the video of our governor sitting next to this guy from Michigan who called teachers the dumbest people at the dumbest colleges, right? That didn't go over too well. Thank goodness, right? Because we have people standing up for public education. Because what are they saying about this? Like, what are they really saying? Well, they're saying that we don't trust our schools and our teachers to educate our students. Is essentially what they're saying. They are legislating our curriculum and saying that because you are having conversations about white privilege and about the effects of discriminatory practices by our government, by our culture, we don't trust you to teach our students anymore. And look, mind you, these bills and these things aren't coming from our students, because I can assure you, 100% positive, that our students want to have these conversations. They are aware of the world around them. And they want to have a place where they can come and discuss these things. That's what we did in my class. That's contemporary issues. I honestly don't know how I would teach this class with legislation like this out there. I've thought about it and I have no idea, because I couldn't do it in good faith to my students, right? Because if a student brought up an issue with race in the United States, I would have to cut them off and say, no, we can't talk about that, because I don't know where that conversation is going to go, and I may make someone feel uncomfortable. Or it may make someone feel uncomfortable. And the penalties for that is so steep, right? Teachers could lose their job, their license could be suspended, and if the state comes in and has to prosecute the teacher or investigate the teacher, and it's not the school district, then the state is going to withhold millions of dollars in funding from that school system. Millions of dollars. Now, if I'm a teacher, I don't want that on my conscience. Especially if my school is a Title I. Thank you, Leanne. My sister, she's an assistant principal, so she keeps me up on my vocabulary. Especially if I'm a Title I school, where so much of my school population gets free and reduced lunch. So what can we do as people living in this world and in this community? Where does this leave us moving forward? You know, a lot of times people come up and they talk about these are perilous times that we are living in, right? We've heard that a lot. I'm going to be honest, we're kind of running out of runway with academic freedom with these bills. 42 states have attempted to pass anti-CRT legislation, and these are turning into and introducing other isms and phobias. And I think I said that right, obias, yeah. Don't say gay bills in Florida. Book bans for obscene material, where librarians could face criminal charges. This CRT was just the gateway. And now look at the legislation they're passing behind it. What can you do? Well, like I mentioned before, the first thing is tell a teacher that you love them and that you support them and that you're there for them. Because we need that now more than ever. Run for office if you are so inclined, or just attend school board meetings, get up and speak and let them know how much you appreciate public schools, the job that they are doing, the school board, and the job that our teachers are doing for our students. And finally, continue to educate yourselves, because this isn't an issue that is going to stay static. It's going to change within the next year. And this is going to be here for the next couple years. We just saw to the north of us a governor win on an anti-CRT platform. This is going to continue at least through 2024. Continue to educate yourselves about this issue.